Hello and welcome once again to M's Hardware. So in today's video, I want to give you guys a crash course, a very fast course on basic Arduino. The reason why is because in my next videos, I'm gonna be using Arduino a lot. So I want you to have at least a basic understanding of how Arduino works. So in the future, if I need to reference someone to a basic Arduino tutorial, I have this for you. Okay, so this is the Arduino IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. This is where you write code for your Arduino and where you also upload the code to your Arduino. So I have an Arduino Uno, which is one of the more basic ones. And we're going to do some simple coding. So I want you to get familiar with the environment. And you can already see two things here in my screen. One says void setup and the other one says void loop. So they have pretty resemble names. So void setup, what you place in between these curly braces is going to be run only once at the beginning of your program. And void loop, it's going to be constantly running over and over again. So it's a loop. So what you do in setup is you place code that you want the Arduino to only run once, which is setup code. And here you place basically all your logic. So let's start. One of the very basic functions of Arduino is the usage of pins. So first, what we're going to do is we have this switch, and I want to show in my screen, in my computer, the value of this switch. So let's get started. First of all, we have to tell Arduino that we're going to use that pin as an input. So how we do this is we write pinMode, then we open a parenthesis. The first parameter, it's the pin number that we're going to use. In this case, I'm going to use pin 12. And then we have to write either input or output. Since this is a switch and we want to read what the value of that switch is, we're going to use it as an input. And since we're going to be repeating 12 because it's our input pin, we can do a define. And what this is if you know that you're going to use a value a lot of times in your code and you don't want to forget what it is or what it stands for, you can do a define. The syntax is very simple. You write hash define, then the name that you want to use for it. In this case, I'm going to use SW for switch. And then the value is going to be 12, which is my pin number. So inside pinMode, instead of writing 12, I'm going to write SW, and that's exactly the same. So since this is inside void setup, it's going to be run only once. And then since I'm going to be sending data from my Arduino to the computer, what I want to do is initialize the serial port. I do this by writing Serial.begin. I open parentheses and then I write the baud rate at which is going to be run. Baud rate, it's simply the speed at which the Arduino is going to be sending the data to the computer. And now I want to declare a variable, in this case of type integer. I'm going to name it value. And this is going to be equal to the value of my switch. How do I do this? I need to read a value from a switch, which is either going to be turned on or off. In other words, 1 or 0. And this is actually pretty simple. So I only write digital read, and then my pin number, which in this case is SW or pin 12, and that's it. I already have the value of my switch stored in the variable value. So now if I want to show this on my screen, what I do is Serial.print. I could stop there, but if I don't write anything else, actually in my screen I'm gonna see a series of ones and zeros in just one line. So what I'll do is I'm gonna do println, which is going to print on a new line every time it receives a new every cycle pretty much. So now I gotta tell our Arduino what I want it to print, which in this case is value, and that's it. We can test it out. Well, first we have to connect the switch because right now we don't have anything connected. So as you can see, I already connected the 5 volts and the ground to my breadboard, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect one of the terminals of my switch to positive, and the other one is gonna go to 12, which is the pin that I'm using in my code. So that should work already. So we're gonna go to tools first off, and we have to select the type of Arduino that we're using. In this case, it's on Arduino Uno, and we also have to select the port. If you have an original Arduino, it's gonna show already in the serial ports. It's gonna say already Arduino Uno. But if you have a generic one, you're gonna have to play around with every port that shows up here and try to upload it until it succeeds. So I already have my port set up. Now I'm gonna upload it. I'm just gonna wait a little bit for it. Uploading, and done uploading. So now if I open my serial monitor, I can see a bunch of ones. And if I change the position of my switch, I'm gonna see what? A mix of ones and zeros. So why is this happening? At this moment, my pin 12 is not connected to anything. So this is an open circuit, and the Arduino is basically trying to guess what the input is. So in order to take away that guesswork, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a resistor, and we're going to connect it to ground. One of the terminals is going to go to ground. The other terminal is going to go to one of the terminals on my switch, the one that's not connected to positive, and then as a common connection that is connected to my switch and to the resistor, I'm going to connect pin 12 of the Arduino. So now what we're doing, as you can see, now if I flip the switch, it goes to 0, and that goes to 1, and there's no mix of ones and zeros anymore. That's because if it's connected to positive, then the current is flowing through the switch all the way to Arduino. But if I don't connect it, now the current is flowing through the resistor, so it's not an open circuit anymore. So the Arduino doesn't have to guess. The resistor is already there telling it that if the switch is not connected, then the default value is going to be 0. Okay, so now we can read 1 and 0, and that may be useful, but if we want to do what the title of this video says, and the description, if we want to control the speed of a motor, I mean, yeah, this controls the speed, it's on and off, but if we want to regulate the speed, we're going to need something different. So now we're reading 1 and 0, but what if we could read a range of numbers, let's say 0 to 1023? Well, the Arduino can also do that, and we're going to do that right now. So now we're going to take a potentiometer, which is a variable resistor, and we're going to plug it in. We're going to put it on our breadboard. And we're going to have to make some changes to our code. Don't worry, we're going to do that soon. And what we're going to do is on the middle pin of the potentiometer, we're going to connect the cable, and we're going to plug that in into one of the analog ports of our Arduino. I'm gonna choose analog 0, it doesn't matter. And you have to take into consideration that the analog ports on the Arduino are only inputs. They cannot be outputs. So they're inputs by default. You'd have to put that in the setup. And what we also have to do is, with the 2 remaining terminals of the potentiometer, one of them we're gonna connect that to negative, and the other one, it's gonna go to positive. And that's pretty much all we have to do. So we have to go back to our code, and now we're gonna do another define, which is gonna be analog switch, or just analog we could do. And this is gonna be A0. So now in the value is not gonna be digital read as W, and we could do digital read analog, but that is not going to work. It's also gonna give us ones and zeros. So what we have to do is replace digital with analog, and now that should work. We're gonna upload our code again. It's uploading. And if we go to our serial monitor, we see 0, but as we move the potentiometer, you're gonna see the value change in the screen. And now we're all the way to 1023. So what can we do with this? We already have a range of values that we can control with something physical as a potentiometer. So now we can jump straight ahead to controlling the speed of the motor. But first, I can explain something. So what I could do is the Arduino already has some analog outputs, which is not really analog. It's PWM, which can work as an analog output, but they're not exactly the same. What I could do is I could connect the motor directly to the Arduino, but that could cause a lot of problems. Why? Because the regulator that the Arduino has on board doesn't have enough juice to power a motor. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna use this, which is an H bridge, and I'm gonna control it by Arduino pins, and I'm gonna use an external power supply to actually drive the motor, which is right here. Okay, so what we're gonna do right now is, as you can see, we have two terminals here, which are directly connected. Well, not directly connected, but that control this motor. If we put positive here and negative here, the motor is gonna turn towards one direction. And if we flip the polarities, we are going to also reverse the direction of the motor. So what I'm gonna do is, one of the pins I'm gonna plug it directly to ground, and the other one I have to put it on one of the PWM pins of the Arduino. The ones that are actually PWM, they have a squiggly line before them. So in this case, I'm gonna use pin 11. Now we have to connect the grounds of my power supply and of the Arduino together. So I'm gonna do this right here. This is the negative of my power supply. I'm gonna put it right here. And the positive of my power supply is gonna go directly to the 12-volt input of my edge bridge. So it's right there. I'm gonna connect it. And now I have to connect ground of my edge bridge to the common ground right here on the breadboard. Now there's something that we have to address. Let's go back to the computer. Is the Arduino can read values from 0 to 1023, but it can only output values from 0 to 255. So we have to somehow convert these values from 0 to 100 to 1023 to values from 0 to 255. So luckily for us, there's already a function inside Arduino that allows us to do exactly that. So we're gonna create another variable, which is gonna be speed. And for some reason, speed is already a reserved word inside Arduino, so we're gonna do speed with a double D. And this is going to equal, the function is called map, and it receives 5 parameters. The first one is the value that we are going to convert, which is this case is value. The second one is the lower bound of our input, which is 0, and the upper bound of our input, which is 1023. Then is our desired lower bound, which is also 0, and our desired upper bound, which in this case is going to be 255. And that's pretty much it. It's going to convert it, and the output value, the possible values for the variable speed are going to be between 0 and 255. So now I'm going to define another pin, which in this case is going to be our mother, that is connected to pin 11. And now, yeah, we could print it to the screen, but in this case we're not going to print value, we're going to print speed. But we're also going to write that value to our pin. So in this case, we're going to use the function analogRead. Then the pin that we want to write on, which in this case is mother, and the value, which in this case is going to be speed with double D. And we're done. So this is a pretty simple code, but it actually is very, very functional. So let's upload it to our Arduino. And it's done uploading. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold the mother out, don't want it to fly away, and I'm gonna turn on my power supply. And as you can see right now, it's not turning. But what happens if I start moving my potentiometer? You can see that it starts spinning. And if I go further away, the speed goes up. So there it is. Slower and faster. This little motors don't go very fast, and the load is only about 150 milliamps, but that's enough for our demonstration. So as you can see, we're actually controlling the speed with the potentiometer. So I hope you like it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to post it in the comments. I'm gonna be looking at them, and I can help you if you get stuck with anything. So I'll see you next time.